It happened just one day after we buried my father. Just one day after, I stood in front of a closed casket and gave a eulogy I barely remember, with my wife's hand squeezing mine, for strength or so I thought. Daniel, 34, quiet by nature, a schoolteacher, and a man who believed in family above all else. My father, Victor, had been my world growing up. He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he was there, always. Baseball games, graduation, even helping me move into the first apartment he'd share with Sarah, my wife. My dad liked her immediately. That girl's got light in her, he once told me. Protect her. So I did, or I thought I did. The funeral had drained me. We buried him on a Wednesday morning. Cold, grey sky. My mom holding a single white rose in her shaking hand. My brother pacing like a caged animal. I remember thinking, this will break all of us in different ways. That night, Sarah held me as I cried. It was the kind of crying you don't even recognize until you're breathless, like your chest is caving in. She kissed my forehead, wiped my tears. You don't have to be strong right now, she whispered. I thought that moment meant something sacred, really. A small act of intimacy in a time of darkness. We lay in silence afterward. I thought, maybe naively, that it was a new chapter. A difficult one, yes, but one we would navigate together. The next morning, I woke up alone. Our bed, half empty, her phone gone from the charger. I didn't panic. Maybe she'd gone for coffee, or to check on my mom. Maybe she needed space. She had been close to my father too. They used to joke, share meals, have long talks on the porch. Maybe this grief wasn't just mine to bear. She didn't return until nearly noon. No explanation, just a vague, I needed to clear my head. She looked tired but not broken. Her eyes were distant, as if she was mentally somewhere else. I didn't push. That evening, we didn't speak much. She made pasta and we ate in silence. I noticed her gaze drift to her phone every few minutes. That was new. Something in her demeanor had shifted. But I told myself grief was messy. It doesn't follow rules. We all cope differently. Later that night, I walked past the bathroom and noticed her phone screen light up through the cracked door. A name, Kyle. I hadn't heard that name in years. Kyle had worked with her briefly when she was still in marketing. We'd had dinner with him once. He seemed harmless, annoying, overly flirtatious, but harmless. I remembered brushing it off back then. She called me paranoid for even suggesting his compliments were too much. Now, seeing his name made my stomach clench. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that guy, jealous, suspicious, but the feeling sat in my chest like a growing weight. That night, I couldn't sleep. The grief felt like static behind my eyes. I wandered into the living room, scrolling aimlessly, and then I saw it. A tagged photo, one of those casual bar snapshots. A group of people I barely knew, but at the edge of the frame, clear as daylight, was Sarah. She wasn't grieving. She wasn't supporting me. She was in someone else's arms, not just anyone. Kyle. The photo wasn't intimate in a blatant way, but their bodies were close. Too close. The kind of closeness that tells a whole story if you're willing to read between the lines. Her smile wasn't the polite one she gave acquaintances. It was the relaxed, beaming kind she used to give me. I clicked on the profile that posted the photo. A mutual acquaintance. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Their story was still up, a short video. Music, drinks, laughter, and there she was, leaning into Kyle, laughing like nothing had happened, like my father hadn't died 36 hours earlier. I watched it twice, then I watched it again. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely think. My hands shook. I felt hot, then cold, then nothing. Just an empty, ringing void. I opened her messages. Her chat with Carl was still there. They hadn't even bothered to delete the conversation. Her reaching out that same night. Him replying in minutes. The plan made in whispers. The location shared, like they were plotting something exciting. There were emojis, jokes, even a message saying, "I just need to feel like myself again." She came home to me afterward, lay next to me, held me. When I confronted her, she cried. But not from shame, from being caught. It didn't mean anything, she said. I didn't know how to process everything. I needed to feel something else. Something else. She said she felt numb. That Carl reminded her of who she used to be before all the pain. That she was scared of losing herself to grief. That it was a mistake. But mistakes don't usually come with timestamps, with outfits carefully chosen, with bar tabs and shared Ubers. I asked her when it started. She swore it was that night, that it was only once, but her face told me more than her words ever could. And deep down, I knew. There's a specific kind of pain that comes when betrayal meets grief. When your world falls apart and the person meant to help you hold it together becomes the one kicking at the rubble. I moved out 2 days later, left the ring on the bathroom counter. No dramatic speeches, no ultimatums, just silence. Her calls came for a while. I didn't answer. She sent messages, long ones, said she hated herself, said she felt empty, that she had panicked, that Carl was just there, that she wasn't thinking straight. I couldn't stop thinking about that night, how I had cried into her lap, how I had clung to her hand at the funeral like it was the only thing tethering me to the ground, how I had believed, even in the darkest moment of my life, that I was lucky to have her. But I wasn't lucky. I was blind. My mother noticed Sarah's absence. I told her vaguely that we were taking space. I couldn't bring myself to ruin Sarah's image in my mother's eyes. She had admired her. They used to garden together, bake together. My mom even told me once, "I'm glad you found someone like her." It crushed me. I started therapy. The sessions were slow at first. I couldn't even form full thoughts without spiraling. But my therapist Angela was patient. She let me talk about my dad, about Sarah, about how betrayal feels like being shoved off a cliff you didn't know you were standing on. I began journaling, writing letters to my father, pages and pages. I told him everything. About the betrayal, the numbness, the shame of not seeing it coming, the rage that came in waves, always followed by emptiness, about the guilt, because even though I had done nothing wrong, I still felt like maybe I wasn't enough. I joined a grief group, a bunch of strangers in a church basement, holding paper cups of coffee, talking about the people they'd lost. I didn't tell them about Sarah, not at first, but one evening, after a woman shared how her daughter had died and her husband left her a week later, I opened up. Their eyes didn't judge, they just listened. That space became sacred, a place where I could be angry and devastated at the same time, where I learned that my grief didn't have to compete with my betrayal, that both could live in me without cancelling each other out. The weeks that followed were a strange blur. I moved in with my brother for a while here, the same one who paced around like a ghost at the funeral. He wasn't much for words, but his silence felt honest. We'd sit in the living room, beer bottles untouched on the table, old movies playing just to fill the space. We never talked about Sarah. He just knew. Some nights, I'd wake up and feel this crushing tightness in my chest like grief had moved in and decided to redecorate. Other nights, I'd lie there wide awake, thinking about that funeral, about how many people had come, how Sarah stood beside me in black, holding my hand, like a scene from a movie. Now every memory from that day felt tainted, like her presence had been counterfeit, like she was already halfway gone even then. Eventually, I went back to work. Teaching was the only place where I still felt like myself. My students didn't know about Sarah. They didn't ask. They just groaned about assignments and made me laugh with their dumb jokes and teenage drama. It was healing in its own weird way, watching them fumble through life, still untouched by the kind of betrayal that strips you bare. About a month later, I saw Sarah again. Not in person, God, no, a video. I wasn't even trying to find it. I was scrolling through Instagram and there she was, in the background of someone's story at an art gallery, looking radiant, talking to Kyle. He was still around. That crushed me in a way I didn't expect. Not because I wanted her back, I didn't, but because I realized she hadn't stopped. There were no tears now, no shame, just her, laughing under gallery lights with the man she once called harmless. I logged off social media after that, deleted the apps. I needed distance not just from her, but from the whole world she seemed to float through now, untethered. A few more weeks passed, and one afternoon, She showed up at my brother's apartment. She rang the bell like it was a Sunday visit. I wasn't going to open the door. I told myself that over and over. But when I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, holding something in her hands, I froze. She looked small. I opened the door without thinking. She didn't speak right away, just held out an envelope. I wrote everything, she said quietly. I know you don't owe me a second more of your time, but I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I didn't take the letter. I just looked at her, not angry, not emotional, just exhausted. Why are you really here? I asked. She swallowed. Because I never said it the right way, and because I can't move on until I know you're okay. I let out a laugh, not a funny one, more like disbelief. You don't get to ask that. You gave up your right to care about me the second you left our bed to be with him. The day after we buried my father, Sarah. She looked down. I know. There were tears in her eyes, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I'm not here to fix anything, she added. I know I broke it. I know I don't deserve closure. I just needed you to hear the truth. I finally took the envelope, not out of curiosity, just to end the conversation. She turned to leave. I didn't stop her. That night, I sat with the letter. I didn't open it 4 hours, just stared at it on the kitchen table. Finally, I unfolded the pages. Her handwriting was messy, rushed. She told me everything. It started before the funeral, not physically. She swore, but emotionally. Texting, late night calls, venting, she called it. She said Carl had been reaching out to offer support after my dad's diagnosis, that he always knew the right words, that he made her feel seen. The night of the funeral, she said she had a panic attack, that she felt like she was disappearing, that the grief made her feel suffocated, like she wasn't herself anymore. So when Carl texted, "Come out, just breathe for a while," she said yes. She wrote that the night got blurry, that one drink turned into 3, that she cried in his car, that he told her she was strong, that he kissed her, and that she let him. She claimed it only happened once, that afterwards she felt sick, that she wanted to come home, but didn't know how to face me. I should have stayed with you. I should have held you. But I was selfish. I was drowning and I reached for the wrong person. At the end of the letter, she wrote something I didn't expect. You don't have to forgive me. I won't ask for that. But I want you to know that loving you was real. That I wasn't faking our life. That I hate what I did every day. And he'll carry that. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I just sat there, numb. Maybe that's what betrayal does after a while. It stops burning and starts freezing. But slowly, very slowly, I felt life beginning to return. Not through some big epiphany or dramatic rebirth. Just in little things. I took long walks, reconnected with old friends, started sketching again, something I hadn't done since college. My brother and I started planning a hiking trip we always talked about, but never took. The world didn't feel safe again, but it felt mine. And then, one morning, I visited my father's grave. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The grass had started to grow again. Someone, probably my mother, had left fresh flowers. I stood there for a long time, the wind brushing against my jacket, the silence almost comforting. I miss you, I said. I wish you were here to tell me what to do. But I'm getting there. I thought about Sarah, about the promises we made, and the ones she broke, about the way she smiled in old photos, about how easily someone can become a stranger when they choose to. I wasn't sure if I forgave her. Maybe I never fully would. But I no longer let her live rent-free in my head. I no longer rewrote the night in my mind, wondering what I could have done differently. Because the truth is, grief doesn't justify betrayal. Nothing does. But pain doesn't make you a victim forever either. At some point, you have to get up. So I did.